Today on Grid Live, we'll go over the latest from Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Qualifying is underway. We'll have updates. NASCAR, they're racing at Daytona, but this time the road course is going to be a really interesting race. We'll preview that. And Formula 1, MotoGP, both of them racing. How will they affect the grid ranking? All that and more right here on Grid Live. Hello everyone, welcome to Grid Live. Joe Samaniego here along with Kobe Lambeth from the Podium Finish. We got a very exciting program today. We got a packed show essentially with Formula 1, MotoGP, NASCAR at the Daytona road course, Australian Supercars, and of course, IndyCar qualifying for the Indianapolis 500. And we have Kobe on essentially all the action at Indianapolis.
Yeah, for sure. And before we talk about Indianapolis, we have breaking news coming out of NASCAR. Austin Dillon tested positive for the virus that's impacting the globe after experiencing mild symptoms. According to Richard Children's Racing, Austin wife's Whitney and his newborn son Ace remain healthy and symptom-free. However, Austin Dillon will miss this weekend's race at the Daytona road course, and NASCAR granted him a medical waiver in order to remain playoff eligible. And Austin Dillon is the fourth NASCAR driver to test positive for the virus, with the three others being Jimmy Johnson, Brendan Gaughan, and NASCAR Truck Series driver Spencer Davis. And Kaz Grala will make his NASCAR Cup Series debut this weekend at Daytona Road Course, replacing Austin Dillon in the number 3 Chevrolet. And on behalf of everyone here at the Grid Network, we wish Austin Dillon a speedy recovery as he recovers from this virus. And now, moving on to the action at Indianapolis, we're going to recap yesterday's Fast Friday, with Zach Veeks was the first driver to hit 230 miles per hour as the drivers received additional boost and they turned up the wit. However, a lot of others put up big speeds as well. With Zach, although Zach Veeks was the first driver to hit 230 miles per hour, a lot of others went above him. And Ryan Hunter-Reay had a top speed of 238 miles per hour. But soon Marco Andretti eclipsed that, going a whopping 239 miles per hour at top speed. Those Hondas were really flexing their muscles. And Connor Daly was looking strong in his Ed Carpenter Racing Chevrolet with a toe, but he was down on speeds without a toe. But with 33 inches and everyone guaranteed a starting spot in this year's Indy 500, Joe, do you think some teams will put more effort into their race setup instead of worrying so much about qualifying?
Definitely, especially if you're starting qualifying later today. One of the big things this year, qualifying is much harder this year. So if you're qualifying first, like we saw Graham Rahal, Takuma Sato early on, you have the advantage of the cooler track, more grip. You're qualifying later on, like Marco and Reddy, you're going to have a hotter track. It's going to be more slick. It's going to be really hard to put down 4 fast laps. So definitely Marco, being fast all race weekend, he may want to focus on getting the car in race trim, knowing that qualifying he already has a big disadvantage of going out later with a hot track.
Yeah, and headed into qualifying, do you think Honda is gonna have an advantage over Chevrolet, considering that we saw a ton of Hondas in the top 15 yesterday and very few Chevrolets?
It appears so. I know right now in the bottom we do have our little ticker going on with qualifying updated. It will be updated throughout the program, but it looks like already Honda is showing their strength. They got a lot of vehicles in the top 10, which is really interesting. In the past, we've seen before where Chevrolet seems to be a little bit stronger, but this year it definitely looks like Honda has that advantage, and it's definitely we're going to be following, see how Chevrolet responds to so far Honda's fast performance.
Yeah, and reflecting on yesterday's Fast Friday, now we're gonna take a look at the top 10 fastest overall speeds. Yeah, Marco Andretti, looking really good, and then Connor Daly second, Scott Dixon third, Ryan Hunter-Reay fourth, Spencer Pigot rounds out the top 5. Another strong day for rookie Alex Palou in 6th, James Hinchcliffe 7th, Takuma Sato 8th, Alexander Rossi, who's currently at the top of the charts right now on the pole at the moment for Indianapolis 500 qualifying, and Marcus Ericsson rounds out the top 10. And next, gonna look at the most important top 10 from yesterday, the fastest 4-lap averages. And see, we have Ryan Hunter-Reay at the top, Marcus Ericsson second, Graham Rahal third, current championships points leader Scott Dixon fourth, James Hinchcliffe fifth. See, as a Honda lockout, the top 5, then the first Chevrolet, Will Power in 6th, who didn't really have a great who didn't really have a great 4 lap average so far in qualifying, towards the bottom of the charts. And then Takuma Sato 7, Marco Andretti 8, Colton Herta 9, Renus VK 10th, and C top 10, eight Honda powered cars, only 2 Chevy powered cars. And the Honda teams, Andretti, Ganassi, Rahal, based on their performances yesterday, they may be contenders for the Fast Nine tomorrow. And Chevrolet seems a little bit behind with the boost in horsepower. And however, speaking of Chevrolet, we can't talk about the Indy 500 without mentioning Team Penske. The Team Penske Chevrolet powered cars, Joseph Newgarden, Helio Castroneves, Will Power, and Simon Pagenaud. Team Penske, they basically own this joint, both figuratively and literally. And Ed Carpenter racing another Chevy powered team usually qualifies well. Ed Carpenter has 3 poles. Connor Daly and Cole Pern are working really well together so far. And Renus VK, fearless so far in the month of August. With Team Penske, when you look at them, Team Penske and Ed Carpenter Racing, do you think we should at least have one car from each organization in the Fast Nine, or do you think Honda's power is just going to be too strong for the Chevrolet powered teams to overcome?
I think we'll definitely be looking at least 2, maybe 3 Chevrolets in the Fast Nine. I anticipate 2 from Penske, maybe 1 from Ed Carpenter Racing. It's going to be really interesting to see who it is, though. And that's the hard part. That's why I think we're only going to see 2 to 3. I know already Fernando Alonso has gone out, taken his lap. He's right now in the, I believe, 11th or 12th. But definitely, it's going to be really hard, I think, for the Chevrolets to make it to the Fast Nine at the current pace they're showing.
Yeah, definitely. And NBC will have coverage of the Fast Nine shootout for the pole with the broadcast starting tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And fans can watch day one of qualifying that's underway right now as we speak on NBC Sports Gold. However, from at 3 p.m. Eastern time today until 5 Eastern time, qualifying is going to be live on NBC, so you'll be able to see who's going to lock themselves into the Fast Nine pole shootout. And by the end of the day, we're gonna know the 9 drivers that will be in the Fast Nine going for the pole. And Joe, after all of the observations we've made here in the past few days, who do you think is gonna take pole position for the 104th running of the Indy 500, and who joins them on the front row?
Oh man, I definitely think it's going to be a Honda. I know one of the things as we were doing our last report, Ryan Hunter-Reay, he has gone to the top of the chart, so I think it's going to be a ready Autosport vehicle. I wouldn't be surprised if it is Marco Andretti. Yes, he is going to be qualifying later when the track is a lot hotter and slicker, but I do think he has the speed overall to make up for that and get the pole. I think we're going to see. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a Andretti front row. So I think it's going to be Marco, Ryan Hunter-Reay, and quite possibly Alexander Rossi. I think it'll be a really dream start weekend for Andretti Autosport.
Yeah, and for me, I'm gonna go with the championship points leader Scott Dixon on the pole. Alexander Rossi is gonna be in the middle. On the outside is gonna be Marco Andretti. Definitely think that Honda's gonna lock out the front row for the 104th running of the Indianapolis 500.
Yeah, it looks like it's definitely going to be a front row lockout for the Indianapolis 500 Honda team. So it's going to be really interesting. We'll definitely be following and providing more updates from qualifying that's going on right now. You can find that on NBC Gold if you have it. But if you don't, stay tuned to us. We'll be giving more updates throughout the program. Now we're going to be switching over to the NASCAR Cup Series. They're going to be running at the Daytona Road Course this race weekend. It's going to be really interesting because this was all in response to the pandemic. We had Watkins Glen canceled. So they wanted to respond with another race, but another road course. So Daytona, the road course, that came in, and we got a really tricky track for all the competitors. As you can see, it is very similar to the 24 hours Le Mans track. 24 hours of Daytona track. The big difference is the chicane has been added, exiting what is turn 12 in this course, but essentially turn 4 of the NASCAR Daytona International Speedway racetrack. So it's going to be a really interesting race. The big thing, of course, we saw a little bit of a preview yesterday with the ARCA Series running this race. Kobe, with the ARCA Series running the Daytona road course, what were some of the things we learned coming into this weekend?
Oh yeah, the Daytona road course race last night with ARCA was crazy. I believe it was the first time in series history that we had a night road course race, as especially at a road course at night. Really crazy ARCA race last night. Michael Self and Ty Gibbs fought really hard. at one point they were side by side around the entire track for the entire lap. That was really exciting watching those two go to battle, and also saw IMSA driver Colin Brown relieve Sam Mayer, who suffered a hairline fracture in his arm in a Trans Am crash last weekend at Road America. Yeah, and it seemed like the trouble spot was the International Horseshoe. I saw at least three spins there, I believe. Yeah, at least three. It was probably a couple of more as well, but definitely International Horseshoe seemed to be a trouble spot. And since we're in Florida this weekend, Florida weather, so it could be very unpredictable. So do not be surprised if we see some pop up showers every now and then. But hopefully, if it does rain, the lightning will stay away. It was definitely a lot of fun last night watching the ARCA cars race on a wet track, and towards the end, it was dry, and it would have definitely been interesting to see what would have happened if the track got so dry where the rain tires just wore out. But certainly this week, heading into the Daytona Road Course today, Xfinity later today, then Truck Series and Cup tomorrow. There's a lot of things that can happen. Thinking about rain, trying to learn the track during the opening laps. Make sure you hit all your marks. Don't make mistakes. Yeah, Daytona Road Course certainly shaping up to be a wild card. And if it rains, you could definitely see someone who doesn't usually run them well, rise to the top and potentially still a win.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting if we have the rains. And then, of course, if we have a track drying, very similar to what we see in Formula One or other sports where you got to respond from the wet tires to the dry tires and when to do it. Now, of course, we do have the Xfinity running today, so that's going to be a really fun race to watch. Trucks will be running tomorrow morning, and then, of course, the Cup Series. They're going to be all running the Daytona Road Course. Now, definitely, I know when it comes to the road course, a lot of people are wondering how will this look like. So definitely, Kobe, can you take it from here with a lap around Daytona?
Yeah, Michael Guerrilla, who's a photographer at the podium finish, was kind enough to record a lap for us, so you all can see what it looks like around the Daytona Road Course, especially with the addition of the new chicane. And Michael Guerrilla competes for Jim Beaver Esports in the NASCAR iRacing Series, driving a number 15 Ford Mustang and enough tall. Let's take a lap around the Daytona Road Course with Michael Guerrilla. Uh, Looks like our video froze a little bit, but it's all good. Michael's gonna be coming through the trioval right here. Start finish. Heavy braking down into turn one into the infield. Yeah, there's a ton of runoff, so if you overshoot, it's gonna be all right. And you want to make sure you full throttle through the little squiggles here. And here was a trouble spot last night in the ARCA race, the International Horseshoe. Saw some drivers spinning. Would not be surprised if we see that in Xfinity Trusted Cup as well. And then full throttle right here with the run heading down into the left-hander kink. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if someone might get punted off here because it's tight. And then here's the West Horseshoe, hard on the brakes. Want to make sure you're carrying speed through this corner right here, and then your full throttle right here with a little short shoot right here and then braking again as we're exiting the infield, heading onto the bank end for Speedway 1 and 2. Yeah, and this is gonna be really fast by the time you get to the exit of the backstretch into the bus stop. But yeah, full throttle right here, and it's gonna be crazy power, 750 horsepower. These cars are gonna be flying heading down into the bus stop. Definitely Daytona Road Course is a high speed circuit. Right here at bus stop, heavy braking. Want to make sure you carry enough speed through the bus stop. Don't get in the grass. Yeah, over the curve right here. Full throttle once again through Speedway 3 and 4. Typically during the Rolex 24, this you be full. Yeah, you be full throttle. At top speed until you're heading down into turn one into the infield. But right here, you're gonna break off of Speedway 4, heading into the chicane. Oh yeah, want to make sure you carry enough speed through here. Don't overshoot it. Yeah, definitely gonna slow the cars down a bit. And then right here, coming through the trioval to complete a lap at the Daytona Road Course. So we want to thank Michael Guerrilla from the Podium Finish for that video. Yeah, definitely going to be a crazy race this weekend.
Definitely, it's going to be a crazy race. I know it's going to be a lot of fun. That was a really fun narration of the lap, seeing the lap. Now, traditionally, when it comes to a road course, everyone wants to start up front because of the Daytona Road Course with the essentially wide speedway section we have. Do you see where starting from the front is not so much of an advantage, but truly anybody could win this race?
Yeah, certainly. While it's always good to start up front, I think that this is a true wild card race where you can. I think you can definitely come from the back and win. Especially if it rains, it could be really crazy. Yeah, yeah, but regardless of yeah, but you still want to start up front because if something could happen mid pack or in the back is so you would just want to make sure that you can put yourself in the best position. But I certainly think that you can come from deep in the field and win this thing. It's a brand new track. First time been here in stock cars, and certainly going to be. It might end up being one of the highlight races of the season.
Yeah, definitely. It looks like it's going to be one of the highlight races of the season. We're going to be really excited to see everything that transpires. And of course, grid live post race tomorrow, assuming that the NASCAR race finishes on time. We'll definitely have post race reactions to the Daytona road course race for the Cup Series.
All right, next we're gonna have an update of the top 10 at the Indy Road. I mean at the Indianapolis 500 qualifying that's going on right now. At the top right now, I have Ryan Hunter-Reay fastest, followed by his teammate Alexander Rossi, two Hondas, and then we have Renus VK first Chevrolet in third, Scott Dixon fourth, Graham Ray Hall fifth, Takuma Sato sixth, Spencer Piggott seventh, Marcus Erickson in eighth, Joseph Newgarden ninth, and then Zach Veach rounds out your top 10.
Thank you for that update. I know we'll definitely be following more Indianapolis coverage throughout the race weekend, as well as in our program as well. So definitely, we're going to have a lot to report about today. Right now, a little bit about the Australian Supercar Series. They had their first race out of three this weekend at Darwin, the Triple Crown this weekend. Start off pretty interesting. Jamie Whincup crashed in practice. Now, for those unfamiliar with Jamie Whincup, he is a seven-time champion in the Australian Supercar Series, the equivalent of the Jimmy Johnson of the series. Scott McLaughlin, he is the grid ranking leader. He also is the defending champion of the series. He took the pole for the race, but it's really interesting. The supercars, for the entire three races, you have to make a mix of using soft and hard tires. Today, the top 10 stars, only three of them went with the soft tires. And essentially, this is where we saw a lot of action where those drivers in the soft tires made their way to the front. The first safety car came out after we had a spin, and essentially we saw another car go into the tire wall. Antoine Despacali, he started on the soft tires, and again, he went with the soft tires. He went ahead, and as he was exiting pit road trying to get the lead, he made contact with Jamie Whincup. Now, Whincup did come out essentially second, but he was handed a 15-second penalty, so he finished way outside the top 10. Scott McLaughlin, he was in the top 10, but then on the restart, he passed James Courtney before the start line of the restart. So he had a penalty as well, and he finished way back in 20th. So not in the top 10 for him. Poor race for Scott McLaughlin, and Anton Despacquelli took the win, his first career win, second race in a row where we saw a first time winner in the Australian Supercar Series. Now, of course, the Australian Supercar Series has two races remaining this weekend at Darwin, the Triple Crown, and of course, whoever scores the most points at Darwin will win the Triple Crown. So it will be awarded this year. Another interesting aspect for the Australian Supercars is we're going to see essentially 4 weeks of consecutive racing for the Supercar Series. So it's going to be really entertaining to see how the Supercar Series handle the next 4 race weekends.
Yeah, certainly they're definitely going to be busy for the next several weeks down under. Yeah, so buckle up, Supercars fans, because there's going to be a lot of racing going on in in Australia. And now revisiting the NASCAR Cup Series today, and moving forward, that there's a new system that NASCAR has in place to do, in place for qualifying. So, and the qualifying lineup is no longer going to be determined based on random draw or points. It's a unique system that's going to have your performance based on your performance in the previous race, driver in that car, and then they're also going to factor in your fastest lap and then your owner points as well. So it just won't be a random draw. Some drivers felt like they were basically getting screwed every week because bad luck, getting a bad draw. But however, with this new system, where you're putting everything, where everything is factored in, owner points, your owner points, fastest lap, performance. Joe, do you think that? What do you think of this? NASCAR's new method of figuring out the starting lineup for the races from now on this season.
I'm a fan of it. Essentially, we're not seeing where it's just a random draw. So if you're in the top 12, you know you're starting 1 through 12. This puts the emphasis on performing and setting a fast lap in the prior race. So that's why we're seeing Ryan Blaney, Brad Keselowski, they're way in the back because of their crash last weekend at Michigan. Kevin Harvick, Denny Hamlin, they were strong all weekend. They were fast all weekend, so they're further towards the front. And this will be really good, especially with this Daytona road course. We're going to see a very different lineup compared to if we stuck with the top 12 in points for the next race weekend at Dover.
Yeah, I certainly think it's a more fair way to go about things. I didn't really like the random draw at all, and I actually wish that we could at least return to qualifying because all other racing series in the world will return to qualifying. But at the same time, I do understand NASCAR's reasoning for wanting to save the team's money and decrease the amount of interaction and that people have with each other. So if someone's infected with the virus, they don't spread it to anyone else. So if we do have to set the qualifying lineup this way where you're factoring in several things instead of just a random draw, I certainly think that it's a better way to go about things. And now looking at the latest silly season rumors, two names that are high on the list are Bubba Wallace and Eric Jones. And Bubba Wallace has definitely been racking up the Benjamins lately, scoring sponsorships from DoorDash and Columbia Sportswear, definitely a big leap for Bubba Wallace. And this led to some believe that Bubba might be staying with Richard Petty Motorsports. Do you think Bubba's going to stay with RPM, Joe, or do you think that Ganassi and Hendrick might be options?
I think he might be staying with RPM. The way everything's been coming out, it's been DoorDash, a deal with RPM, Bubba Wallace. I do see where Bubba Wallace, he does have a lot of these sponsors, but I do think a lot of the sponsors are also vested in his 43 ride. And it is a really good, feel good story. The 43 car hasn't been in victory lane in a long time. It hasn't seen the glory days since Richard Petty retired, and essentially ever since his last win, his 200th win at Daytona. So a lot of people I see are pulling for the 43 car to be in victory lane, Bubba Wallace to do well. And what's really interesting with these sponsors like Columbia, DoorDash, these are brand new sponsors. We haven't seen a lot of apps coming into the Cup Series to sponsor. Columbia Sportswear, they're based in Oregon. They're doing mostly outdoor gear stuff. We don't see a whole lot of them in NASCAR, but now we're going to. We're going to see DoorDash. And it's really exciting to see new different sponsors coming into the sport and supporting the drivers.
Yeah, you definitely bring up a good point there. Especially during times like this where you see a lot of people struggling, economically. You would expect, that people aren't going to look to invest right now, but seeing DoorDash and Columbia Sportswear come into the sport, especially during tough times, definitely a welcome sight to see new sponsors joining the sport. And the other driver we mentioned in the part of silly season, Eric Jones, and so far Eric Jones has nothing to announce yet. And there's many rumors going around about where he's going to be driving next year. The Eric Jones fans out there want to know what his future is going to look like in NASCAR. Do you think this is definitely unsettling for all the Eric Jones fans out there?
It has to be a bit unsettling for the fans because we were hearing everything about there was going to be an announcement this week. We haven't heard anything. So if you're a fan, you're probably wondering, did a deal fell through? Did something go wrong? The big thing, of course, with silly season, especially in the NASCAR Cup Series, it's going to take a while. So I am not being a long time observant of NASCAR, seeing how the industry works. I wouldn't be too concerned for Eric Jones yet. For the fans, of course, their favorite driver, they want to see him in the top ride. They want to hear an announcement that he will be back. But I wouldn't be too concerned yet if I was an Eric Jones fan.
Yeah, in the next few weeks, starting on Sunday, we're gonna have two wild card races coming up at the same track, but on different circuits. Daytona Road Course on Sunday, definitely gonna be a wild card, especially if we throw rain into the mix. And when you're super race on the super speedway at Daytona, all you have, anything can happen. The draft is the great equalizer. Do you think that Bubba Wallace and Eric Jones could play spoiler and win the Daytona Road Course or the Daytona Oval in a few weeks, and how much would a win help both of those drivers looking for rides next season?
A win will help both drivers out immensely. essentially you get in the playoffs, you're in the playoffs. Now you have something to carry over for next year, whether it's recruiting more sponsors or looking for a new deal that we got to win. I feel a win, especially at the Daytona road course, will be seen as a really impressive feat because it is the first time any driver is going to be on that road course. Dover, that's another good track where if any one of them were to win, you could really put down your resume. We won at the Monster Mile. Daytona, the restrictor plate, it's a win in Daytona. It's always a big deal. We know it's crazy, so it could be really anybody's game. But the big thing, a win for either driver will pay huge dividends in their future for next year.
Yeah, I think a win would be huge for both, but at the moment right now, I think a win would be even bigger for Eric Jones because, Bubba Wallace is racking up all of these sponsorship deals, and it seems like, that for the first time in his career, Bubba's going to know he's going to be on the grid next year instead of wondering, am I going to keep my job? Am I going to keep my job? But, and we haven't heard anything about Eric Jones sponsor wise, so I don't know what his situation is like there, but I think at the moment, that Bubba Wallace is sitting pretty at the moment. All of these sponsors are coming on board, supporting him. But with Eric Jones, we haven't heard anything so far. So I think that winning would definitely help Eric Jones a lot more right now than Bubba Wallace. Do you agree or disagree, Joe?
I would have to agree with you. The win will definitely help him a lot for next year, especially. The big thing is going to be, can he do it? I feel for him, especially Daytona, the Super Speedway will be the best bet. Road course, that's a wild card, probably a bigger wild card than the Super Speedway, to be honest. And then Dover, we know there's a good amount of drivers that are a certain favorite at Dover to win over there.
Yeah, certainly, definitely some. It's gonna be a big few weeks coming up for both Bubba Wallace and Eric Jones. It's gonna be interesting to see where they're going to be competing next season in 2021. And now switching gears over to we've talked about supercars, we talked about NASCAR and IndyCar at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but now switching gears, we're going to talk about the Formula One that's arrived in Spain for the Spanish Grand Prix, and Max Verstappen is looking to win two in a row in qualifying. He took third. But in speaking of qualifying, going to take a look at the top 10 results from earlier today. Lewis Hamilton on pole once again. And then I guess my mistake. Max Verstappen second, Valtteri Bottas third, Sergio Perez fourth, and Lance Stroll fifth. So two racing points in the top five. Alex Alex Albon sixth, Carlos Sainz seventh, Lando Norris 8th, Charles Leclerc ninth, and Pierre Gasly rounds out the top 10. And so, we mentioned Max Verstappen looking for two in a row at Spain. What do you think his chances are of getting the win against two very strong Mercedes?
Is running against two very strong Mercedes. There was a little bit of a typo, so Max Verstappen is starting on third. For some reason, seems like we had a little bit of a typo when it came to the graphic being typed up. But definitely when it comes to him trying to win against Mercedes, I do think he has a really good shot, especially we're going to talk a little bit about it, tire management. We saw him excel at this last week, and I think he's really going to have to do the same thing again this week, taking care of those tires and bringing the fight to Mercedes.
Yeah, certainly. Just like Silverstone, it's going to be a hot day in Spain. And once again, we have the soft tire compound brought by Pirelli. With softer tire compounds, than last week at Silverstone. Do you think the drivers are going to be concerned about tire management once again?
Yes, this time Pirelli they brought even softer tires than what we had at Silverstone. So tire management is going to be a really big deal. Today they were talking to all the drivers about the hot temperatures. The hottest has been in Barcelona while they're there because of course they're racing a lot later in the season. Now one of our viewers did ask the question: Hamilton didn't win last race. You really think he's going to go back to back without wins? Very likely. I mean, unless the Mercedes team has figured out to save those tires, especially the front. Of course, they have that steering system where they could push to increase their steering or pull to decrease their steering. If they could get that and the tires to work well and take care of them, I do see them essentially responding back with a win. But if not, and this is where I think Max Verstappen does have the advantage from what he displayed last week, I think it's going to be Max Verstappen looking at a win and taking the win and the fight to Mercedes and hopefully starting to set up a championship battle between all three of them for Formula One World Championship.
So Joe, if you're on the box for one of these drivers at the Spanish Grand Prix, what is your perfect strategy for winning on Sunday?
Definitely the perfect strategy. I feel you want to be on those medium tires at the start. We saw a lot of drivers were on the mediums in Q2. Now, of course, Sebastian Vettel, who will be starting outside the top 10, has a nice advantage. He gets to choose any tire, fresh tire. So I wouldn't rule out Sebastian Vettel just yet. As long as he doesn't have any big problems and he could really take care of the tires he starts with, I could see him trying to pull an upset win. But definitely, if you're up front, I'm looking at two-stop strategy. I don't think a one-stop strategy will work. A three-stop strategy is less preferred, especially if another car can make it in two stops. But definitely, I'm looking at a 2 to 3 stop strategy.
And one driver returning to the paddock this weekend is Sergio Perez, who had previously tested positive for the virus. However, Sergio Perez was able to test negative, and he's back and ready to go. And his replacement, Nico Hulkenberg, did a fantastic job. In the 70th anniversary Grand Prix, holding down the fort until Perez was healthy enough to return. With Nico Hulkenberg performing well, he's been rumored to potentially take a seat at Alfa Romeo racing next season. And with Nico Hulkenberg coming back into the Racing Point stable, performing well, and now Hulkenberg is entered the rumor mill for potentially returning to the grid full time next season. Do you think that and Sergio Perez also heard rumors about Sebastian Vettel going to Racing Point as well, which is going to be Aston Martin racing F1 next season? Do you think that with all the rumors flying around, especially with Nico Hulkenberg's great performance in his car, do you think Sergio Perez's silly season just got a lot harder?
Yes, because we've been talking about before Sergio Perez tested positive that his seat might be out with Racing Point, especially to go Aston Martin and with Vettel, and it looks very likely. There's still the chance maybe he will stay there and Lance Stroll will be on the outside looking. But still, there's a lot of folks that are not convinced that will happen. So a lot of folks were assuming, okay, Perez might be looking at Haas or Alfa Romeo. Haas, they are nowhere near really that competitive unless they use strategy like they did with the tires back in Hungary. That's the only way they seem to be towards the front. They didn't make it out of Q1 today, both Haas vehicles. One Alfa Romeo did make it out of Q1. That was Kimi Raikkonen. So a lot of folks were anticipating Sergio Perez to possibly go there. Well, now that Nico Hulkenberg has come in, replaced Sergio Perez for 2 races when he was sick, didn't get to race one, but raced the second race, got them a really good finish. Now people are like, hey, we want you. And that might be the same seat Perez is going after. So really ironic twist of fate on how coming in to help out Sergio Perez has turned into now possibly making it a little harder for Sergio Perez to lock down a seat for 2021.
Yeah, Sergio Perez definitely in a tough spot right now, especially with all the rumors that we've heard about Sebastian Vettel joining Racing Point next season, and then Nico Hulkenberg comes in, and I've seen drivers say this a lot. The toughest thing to do is to watch somebody drive your car, and I can't imagine how hard it was for Checo to watch Nico Hulkenberg, in his vehicle performing extremely well, and so I'm sure he's definitely going to be worried, until things become more clear and official, because anything is possible. Even if a driver is expected to return next season or have a contract, that doesn't guarantee that they will be on the team next season. So Sergio Perez could come back to Racing Point, or he could be out, especially with Sebastian Vettel and Nico Hulkenberg on the market, or anybody else, who could be in line for a Formula One seat could also be driving for Racing Point.
Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting to see all what happens with next year's silly season for Formula One. It's gonna be I think it's gonna be very competitive, especially for that Racing Point seat. We're gonna have the exact same cars with minor changes for next year, so that Racing Point is gonna be a good car. You have a good quality driver. I could see you definitely being towards the front week in and week out. Now, of course, switching back to NASCAR, really interesting. This is the first road course for the 2020 season. Normally, we would have run in Sonoma and then, of course, Watkins Glen, but we haven't. This is the first time this year that we're running a road course for the Cup Series. It's been really interesting, though. You look at 2019, Martin Truex Jr. won in Sonoma, and Chase Elliott won at Watkins Glen and the Roval. 2008, Martin Truex Jr. again won in Sonoma. Chase Elliott won at Watkins Glen, and Ryan Blaney took the first win at the Roval. Of course, that's where Martin Truex and Jimmy Johnson both tangle in the last corner coming to the checker flag. When it comes to this weekend's race at Daytona, out of those three, who do you see is most likely as the favorite to win at Daytona Road Course?
Well, I'm not really sure if there is a clear favorite right now, Joe. But if I had to pick one of the three, I'd have to. I actually think it might be Ryan Blaney. Ryan Blaney runs really well. At the road courses. So does Truex and Chase Elliott. I'm sure Chase Elliott's gonna, really disappointed that we're not going to Watkins Glen this year, and this race is going to, replacing Watkins Glen on the schedule. But I'm sure, as the drivers get more laps early on in the race, I think their first few laps of the race, gonna be like a mini practice session. Drivers finding their braking points, finding out how hard they can push the car, and all of that. But certainly, I think all three of those drivers will run well at the Daytona Road Course. But I'm sure Chase Elliott's definitely missing Watkins Glen a lot more than the other two you mentioned.
Yeah, Chase Elliott seems to own Watkins Glen lately. He's really gonna rather wish we were at Watkins Glen. The big thing with the Daytona Road Course, since nobody has done laps there in a stock car, I do see Martin Truex Jr. as a favorite. He seems to do really good, and he could have easily won that first Roval race had Jimmy Johnson not spun and hit him in the last corner. Speaking about Jimmy Johnson, this week he debuted his rally paint. Instead of the black scheme, it now has a white scheme, and Ally is really behind it with the rally to try to get Jimmy Johnson a win and get into playoffs. Do you see Jimmy Johnson winning a race before the playoffs?
Well, with the way things are going right now for the 48 team, I just don't see it happening. However, you know, we mentioned earlier in the program, Daytona Road Course, Daytona Oval, two wild cards on the schedule. I mentioned Florida weather. It can rain. There's rain in the forecast today and tomorrow in Daytona. Just like last night, saw the ARCA cars start off on a wet track. Had the rain tires and everything. So, in the rain, you can see drivers sliding off course. And Jimmy Johnson, if it rains, like towards the end, and have drivers sliding off course, and he stays on the track and out front takes the checker flag, he can get in the playoffs. Or also, if you're leading, come into the tri-oval and take the checker flag at the Daytona Oval, you know win right there, miss all the big ones, and all of the crazy stuff that happens on super speedways. Jimmy Johnson can certainly win at the Daytona Road Course or the Daytona Oval. And also, we have the Dover doubleheader. Yes, I said it. Been a crazy tongue twister trying to say double header, Dover doubleheader. But in all seriousness, I do think that Jimmy can win, but it's certainly not going to be easy for him, especially given all the struggles that the 48 teams have seen. Since we've returned from the pandemic break.
Yeah, it's definitely been a lot of struggle. I think Dover might be his best bet, and definitely if the weather was to come in. Now, for all our fans, we invite you to participate in the chat. We're going to do our weekly segment of NASCAR in or out. It's really simple. We're going to take a look at the points and see who's all in the playoff bubble and if they're going to still be in the top 16 after Sunday's race at Daytona or out of the top 16. So here is a look at it. Of course, green indicates that they're well safe in the points, so we're not going to focus on them. But definitely, we're starting out with Clint Boyer, 60 points. Now, technically, the only way somebody can knock him out is if they were to win the race. 60 points is the maximum number of points for a race win and all the stages. So, Kobe, when it comes to Clint Boyer, 60 points ahead, do you see him being in or out?
I definitely think that Clint Boyer is going to be, right now has, 60-point cushion. It seems like Clint's going to be safe heading into the double header weekend at Dover. Yeah, but, anything can happen. Get caught up in a crash of the road course, get points that are, not good at all, like very few points, then he might be in trouble. But I definitely see Clint Boyer remaining in, and now looking at Matt DiBenedetto, who's 57 points above the cutoff line. Do you think Matt DiBenedetto is going to be in or out?
I think Matt DiBenedetto is going to be in. 57 points. That means he has to finish literally dead last and have somebody essentially sweep the entire weekend. Of course, somebody could get all the stage points, finish second, and he'll be right there on the bubble at 16th place. But I highly doubt that. I think he's pretty much safe in for the race weekend. Now, behind him, William Byron, he has 26 points in the good. So 26 points ahead of the cutoff line. And that driver in right behind him is, of course, Eric Jones, who we've been talking about lately, especially with silly season. Do you see William Byron and that 24 Chevrolet in or out after Daytona?
Well, I think William Byron is definitely going to be in, but I think that 26 point cushion is going to come is definitely going to shrink, and he's going to need to go out at the Dover doubleheader and and perform well, not have any issues, and also stay out of trouble. Final race at the Daytona Oval, because you get caught up in the big one, and it's definitely may ruin your playoff hopes, but definitely winning a race, that would be the best way for William Byron to erase all of his worries, if he has any, about not making the playoffs. And now looking at Eric Jones, the first driver out right now, 26 points behind William Byron. Eric Jones, definitely wants to make it to the playoffs and perform well this final set, so to show Joe Gibbs that he's making a mistake by letting him go, and plus all of the pressure of wondering where he's going to be next season. 26 points out, Joe. Eric Jones, in or out?
I think he'll be out. I don't see Eric Jones doing this. I think he could finish in the top 10 in Daytona. I don't think William Byron is going to finish 26 positions behind him, or Eric Jones is going to score stage points, finish ahead of William Byron, who will score no stage points and finish behind. That's a really hard scenario. So I think Eric Jones is going to stay out. Tied with Eric Jones, 26 points out, Jimmy Johnson. We just talked about his rally paint scheme, the experience he brings. If we have a tricky track, he might be a big gain. Do you see Jimmy Johnson in or out after Daytona?
I think Jimmy Johnson is still going to be out, but I'm actually going to go out on a limb and say that Jimmy's going to have a good finish, and that 26 point cushion is definitely going to shrink a little bit. So Dover's always been a good track for him coming up. So if Jimmy Johnson can go out of the Daytona road course, then Dover do well both of those races and then stay out of trouble. I think Jimmy can potentially point his way in, but you know, it certainly won't be an easy task. And definitely, if I'm Jimmy, definitely want to try to instill a win here, so I don't have to worry about missing the playoffs in my final season as a full-time NASCAR Cup driver. And now looking at Tyler Reddick, 36 points out. Do you think Reddick is going to be in or out?
I see Tyler Reddick being out unless he was to pull off a win, which will be a big surprise. 36 points behind. I don't see him getting in the top 16 at Daytona. So that's going to be a wrap for our in and out. Definitely, we still have a lot of racing to cover, including MotoGP. MotoGP, of course, had qualifying today for the Austrian Grand Prix, which is going to be run tomorrow. The big news that came out today, though, Andrea Dovozio, his manager announced that he will not return back to Ducati. He's been with Ducati since 2013. In total, he has 13 wins with them. The best was in 2017 when he had 7 wins. Last year, he only had 1 win, and instead of finishing second in the points, he got third in the points. Now, the big thing, of course, with Dovozio on his way out, qualifying today, a lot of people wondering where he would end up. He would end up fourth on the pole for tomorrow's race. Mark Vinales in the Yamaha got a pole. Jack Miller, Fabio, who is the current post leader in his Yamaha, is going to be starting third. And then we have Paul Espargaro in the KTM. Of course, KTM got their first win last week, but Brad Binder is way outside the top 10. Then you can see the rest of the top 10: Joan Mar, Franco Morbidelli, Alex Rins, Joanne Sarko, and Takata Nakagami with the Honda. But of course, it's not the factory Honda. The factory Hondas are way in the back, starting quite way back. They're still obviously without Mark Marquez, who is not racing because of his injury. Overall, Kobe, when we see that, do you see Honda in trouble since they have no Mark Marquez? The two Honda factory teams are both starting out in the back of the pack, and they only had one team in the top 10. Are they in trouble?
Yeah, I certainly think that Honda's definitely in trouble. I believe they've been, way too dependent on Mark Marquez, to like carry the heavy weight for Honda. And I definitely think that Honda needs to, like, when the off season rolls around, they definitely need to reevaluate their entire program and make sure they're gonna keep up with the other factory programs over in the MotoGP world.
Yeah, definitely in the other MotoGP world, it's going to be really interesting. to see how the other teams are going to respond to this opportunity since Honda, they're not, they're just nowhere up front. I do see where Honda, they may want to start looking into, okay, next year we'll have a bike that suits Mark Marquez, but we definitely need something that's much more manageable for the teammates because if Mark Marquez is out, they're nowhere to be seen. Mark Marquez has really carried that team a lot, so it's definitely going to be really interesting to see, especially next year. I think if Honda is going to respond with a different plan.
Yes, certainly. Honda may need to turn to a different plan, relying on Mark Marquez. And, someday there's going to be a time when Mark Marquez is no longer around. So when Mark Marquez is no longer with Honda, what are they going to do? Like, who's going to be doing the heavy lifting like Marquez has been doing for them? So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what the future looks like for the factory Honda team. And now at times for everyone's favorite game, pick a winner. We definitely want to encourage all of our fans and viewers out there to comment in the chat for pick a winner, and if you get it correct, we will add you to the pick a winner standings right there. See, right now I'm way ahead with 9 over everyone else. Then we got Joe in second, fourth, Seth, Matt, Care Bear, and Jack from Formula E Zone with 1. So definitely, if you want to see your name up there on the board for the rest of the season, yeah, we encourage you to participate. Pick a winner and see how well you do against us. And yeah, we got 2 Australian Supercars races left this weekend, a Formula One, the NASCAR Cup Series. But we're going to start off with the Australian Supercar Series. So Joe, give me your 2 winners.
I'm going to go with Shane Van Ginsburg. He's going to have the soft tires. I think he's going to come out, snatch a win. And then for the second race, Scott McLaughlin, I feel, is going to rebound after a disappointing race. I think he'll get the top 3 in the second race, but third race he's going to come back with a win.
And Joe, I promise, I'm not copying you. But those are the same 2 picks I had as well: Shane Van Gisbergen and and then Scott McLaughlin. And also, yeah, now time for Formula One. Pick a winner for the Spanish Grand Prix. Do you think Max Verstappen is going to get another Spanish Grand Prix victory, or is it going to be someone else?
I see it being someone else. I see it's going to be Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton is going to respond back with a win. I feel Mercedes is going to do everything they have done possibly could to make sure that their tire management problems from Silverstone is addressed. I don't see them having the same issues for a third race in a row, and I think Lewis Hamilton is going to take the win.
Yeah, and I'm sure some people are going to see this as me, taking the safe route. I do think that Max Verstappen is going to be a contender for the win, but I'm going to take Lewis Hamilton to get another win added to his historic career. And next, finally, the NASCAR Cup Series race at the Daytona Road Course. Joe, who's going to be the first winner on the Daytona Road Course with the addition of the new chicane?
Kyle Busch. My pick is Kyle Busch. I see his experience doing the 24 hours of Daytona is going to pay off. He's going to climb to the front. That new chicane, the big trouble I think Kyle Busch needs to watch out for, getting bunted from behind or making a mistake because it is not a sports car, it's a stock car, but I do think he has a car control. And I do see if we have a dry race, I see that favoring him, and I think Kyle Busch is going to take the win.
Yeah, Joe, I think we must have been looking at the same stats in the past few days because I'm also going with Kyle Busch to win at the Daytona Road Course. You mentioned he ran the Rolex 24 earlier this year. Aim Vaster Sullivan, Lexus GT3 in the GT Daytona class. Kyle Busch performed really well, and has definitely got a lot closer to his fastest teammate at that car, Jack Hawksworth, who's definitely a beast over there in IMSA. Yeah, but like you mentioned, the stock car is not the sports car. Definitely not going to be the same, but at least Kyle does have experience on that layout, minus the addition of the new chicane. So once again, we definitely encourage all of our fans and viewers out there to participate and pick a winner. Tell us who you think is going to win in the next 2 Australian Supercars races. Who's going to win the Spanish Grand Prix and the inaugural NASCAR Cup Series race on the Daytona Road Course? Next, want to bring an article from the Podium Finish to your attention. Yeah, my colleague Terry Jones wrote another fantastic feature story in an interview with Team Penske hauler driver Justin Bosch. And Justin Bosch currently drives the hauler for the number 12 Team Penske squad for Ryan Blaney. And if you're interested in learning more learning about Justin Bosch's life on the road as a hauler driver for one of motorsports successful teams in Team Penske, please check out Tara's article, and the link is in the video description. I also want to take this time to welcome Adam Kuhn to the podium finish as the IndyCar and IMSA columnist. So far, Adam Kuhn has written several recaps for us so far, and we're definitely looking forward to having Adam as a member of the podium finish team. And before we go off the air today, I wanted to get a quick rundown of the standings right now in Indianapolis 500 qualifying that you can watch on NBC Sports Golden. But remember, at 3 p.m. Eastern time, you can watch on NBC, so you can see you get on the Fast 9. So looking at the rundown right now, Andretti Autosport 1-2-3 with Ryan Hunter-Ray at the top with a 4-lap average of 231.330 miles per hour. Then you got Alexander Rossi in second, James Hinchcliffe third. Then the first Chevrolet, Renus VK fourth. Then got Scott Dixon rounds out the top five. Rookie Alex Palou once again showing a strong form in sixth. Graham Rahal seventh, and his teammate Takuma Sato, Spencer Baker eighth and ninth. So Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan 7, 8, 9. Marcus Ericsson rounds out the top 10. Then we have Joseph Newgarden and 11. Felix Rosenquist 12. Zach Veets 13, followed by Pato Award. Jack Harvey ran out at the top 15, and then Ed Carpenter 16, which might be a shocker considering he's been a consistent front runner, fastest car, one of the fastest cars in qualifying. 17th, Oliver Askew, Will Power, Team Penske 18th fastest, shocker. Dalton Kellett 19th, Fernando Alonso and McLaren, who haven't really shown a lot of single car speed. 20th, have James Davison in 21st, Sage Karam 22nd, and Ben Hanley, Dragon Speed 23rd. Looks like Dragon Speed's a little bit off the pace right now. James Sage Karam moves in 22nd, the second to last car in the timing sheet at 227 miles per hour. Ben Hanley has 220 miles per hour for his 4-lap average. So definitely the Dragon Speed squad has a lot to work with. And, and evaluating the top 10 right now, we have 9 Hondas and 1 Chevrolet. So Joe, definitely looks like our predictions about Honda looking strong, definitely correct.
So far, definitely the Hondas are looking really strong. We'll be following this. And of course, be sure to follow Kobe on Twitter at Kobe Lambeth, as well as the Grid Network at Grid Rating and the Grid World Motorsport League at Grid_WML for all the updates in regards to the Indianapolis 500. Tomorrow, Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, assuming the NASCAR race does complete and conclude on its normal scheduled time, we will have Grid Live post-race. We will go over all the racing results, including who took the pole at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and the updated grid ranking. It looks like it's going to be very interesting. A lot of shakeup, especially with Scott McLaughlin not getting a win. And Tony Felix Acosta didn't finish in the top 10 for one race. The other race, he got 9. So we got a lot of change up, it looks like, for the grid ranking. Of course, Wednesday, Grid Tonight program, our weekly news program. We encourage everyone to watch. It's going to be a fun program as we go over everything from the racing news across the motorsport world. With that said, we encourage everyone to please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We hit 50 subscribers yesterday. Thank you, everyone, for subscribing to us. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and visit our website, gridranking.com. Like and comment on our videos. We'd love to hear from you, especially our Rookie Stripe series, what subject you want us to discuss next. And of course, we have more programs coming up ahead. Life on the Grid later this month. We're going to be very excited to share with everyone our special guests soon on that program, and a lot going for us right here at the Grid Network. For Kobe Lambeth, I'm Joe Samaniego. Thank you for watching. You have a wonderful evening and enjoy the race weekend.